Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. This is such a fun show because I get to talk about deals with deal makers ranging from like NFTs. And we just interviewed a guy who, did a bunch of stuff in NFTs to SPACs and people raising capital and all sorts of topics about building, growing deals. Right. So what we wanted to do is we've been hearing things about special purpose vehicles, and we're like, what the heck is that? So we did a bunch of Googles, and this company, this guy came up time and time again. So we're like, why not ask the deal making expert? So with that, Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you, Josh. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. So before we dive into SPVs and what the heck they are, where are you guys located?
Yeah, we're in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay, right on, right on. So at the time of this recording, we're in July 2022. You're in Salt Lake, right? Did I get
Yes.
that right? Okay, cool.
Yep.
And you're building this business. Tell us about the business that you're building.
So Assure is a SPV expert business, if you will. And SPVs have a lot of character, a lot of texture, a lot to it. And what we are today and what we've become, and the origin story, the founder story is long, but we're a fintech platform. So SPVs are done best with technology.
Cool. All right. So what the heck is an SPV? Let's dive right into the meat of this. What is an SPV?
So SPV, it's an acronym for special purpose vehicle. And you step back, you really kind of peel the onion back. An SPV is a structure, an entity structure. So out there in the entity structure world, there's like C corps and S corps and sole proprietor and LPs and LLCs. And an SPV is either an LP or an LLC structure. So what you do is you go to Delaware and you say, hey, I want an LLC of my very own. And people use LLCs for everything, businesses and otherwise. And so typically someone will set it up for a business, barbershop, cleaning, software, whatever it is, right? And so the special purpose vehicle acronym kind of came in where it's like, okay, I'm setting up an LLC, which typically is used for a business, but I'm not setting up a business. I'm going to use it for a very special purpose, a very unique, one-time, stripped down purpose. All I want to do is I want to aggregate some people's money, and we want to go invest into a startup company or buy some real estate or get some secondary shares. So it's not this operating business with retail space and payroll and employees and time off and a company fleet of cars, right? That's complex. It's like all I'm doing is I'm grabbing some of my buddy's money. We're going to put it into this little entity. We're going to hold some shares. We're just going to sit there quietly and hope that this company goes public someday or has a great exit. So the special purpose is I just want to do this investment and I need a vehicle to do it. I need an LLC. So that's where the acronym came from. I'm going to go do LLC for a very special purpose. I'm going to call my LLC a vehicle, SPV.
Okay. Now, side by side, right? I own a few LLCs, right? So side by side, if I was to go, I want a special purpose vehicle, SPV, to let's use this example. We have a project that we want to knock down some capital. You're like, hey, I'm going to throw in some money, me too, and maybe a few of my other buddies, right? And we're going to throw in some money to do a deal. Side by side, what are the differences between the LLC over here and the SPV over here?
So structurally, nothing. You both go to Delaware. You both fill out the exact same form. You both get a registered agent. Everything looks identical. It's really after that, how you use it, why you use it becomes different, and how and why you use it ends up manifesting itself through documentation. So if you're going to set up an operating business, you're going to open a hair salon, your documentation around that's going to be very different than the documentation around we're going to do a project, we're going to throw in a few dollars, we're going to buy a real estate piece of property.
Okay. Why in the world did you like, how big of a need is this to be, to become the experts in SPVs? Like what, how did you know that, hey, there's enough need out there that I'll build a business around that? Like walk us through how that came to be.
So I didn't actually know there would be a business there, kind of fell into it. So my background is lawyer, MBA, and then here in the state of Utah, they ran a program good 15 years ago called the Utah Fund of Funds. It had an economic development aspect, and I was hired to launch it and run it. So I got exposure to it. So I had this unique background of deep private equity, venture capital experience, lawyer, MBA, and I was out there trying to grow my own business after leaving the Utah Fund of Funds, and I got a phone call from AngelList. And AngelList says, "Hey, do you guys know how, can you figure out how to do funds in bulk?" And at that time, SPVs and syndicators and SPEs and rolling fund, like all these terms that we hear weren't invented yet. AngelList says, "Can you do funds in bulk?" And that's because if you step back, an SPV looks a lot like and functions almost exactly like a venture fund. Kind of another kind of side-by-side interesting comparison. So I said yes. I wasn't exactly sure what I was saying yes to, but I was interested in growing my business. And I just thought it'd be like, maybe there's a little revenue here, right? A little side project, little side hack going on. And so AngelList sent us a few deals. My co-founder, who was my wife, I did kind of the legal, the sales, the structuring stuff. She did all the organizational, marketing, finance stuff. And AngelList started off, we started doing SPVs, and like the very next week, got a phone call from Seed Invest. They're like, "Hey, can you do that for us?" And the phone just started ringing, and we just like, "Oh, this is kind of cute and fun, a little extra revenue. Oh, maybe it's a little bigger than we thought." And it actually wasn't until 18 months later that my co-founder and I just looked at each other and just said, "There's something here. Yeah. There's a need here that we didn't realize and understand." And the way I kind of describe that need is affordable structured vehicle services.
Yeah. Because in the way of the past, right, before AngelList, the team over at AngelList reached out to you, how were things done in the past when it came to, funds in bulk, or, hey, we have all these investors and they want to get together and they want to do a deal, but man, that's complicated, right? Like how were things done in the past?
So in the past, you would go out and you would have to build all of your services by yourself. So you would go hire a law firm. And when you hired that law firm, you would spend $30,000 to $150,000 just on the documents that you would need to do this special purpose vehicle. You would need to hire accounting. You would need to hire a tax firm. Tax firms would be charging you anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 per year per entity. So you start putting all this money on the table, and you're looking at $300,000 just to do the SPV, get it closed, and you're looking at $300,000, kind of in ongoing administration costs. So you're looking at saying, if I don't raise $3 million or more, this makes no sense. This makes no sense, right? So you look at that and you say, who wants to, who does $3 million SPV deals? Well, there's some people out there, and real estate deals and stuff like that. But when you come down into the startup land, you may be raising $100,000 total, and you can't spend $300,000. Obviously, you don't have the $100,000 left because you've spent it all on fees. And so there was no one-stop shop. There was nobody that pulled all those things together. And in addition to that, there was complexities like, do I need to do a security filing? Do I need to do taxes? What do I do if a document comes in? Do I sign it? Do I don't? Do I need to be registered? So all these kind of scary-ish questions. We've got the IRS, the SEC, the state of Delaware, your home state, all these kind of government agencies that are going to call you, send you letters. You're like, I don't want to step into this. This is a little too much for me. And so nobody did it. It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah, because I mean, if it cost me 300 to raise 100, it doesn't really make sense unless you're maybe in Silicon Valley. Some of the deals that they work on out there make absolutely no sense to me. And we're learning this world of capital raising, unless it's a certain value, investment bankers aren't going to help you raise the capital, or groups are. So there was a threshold, and you said maybe the 3 million mark.
I think that was minimum.
Yeah. Okay. So anything under that, you just had to go to grandma and ask her for money, or go try to borrow money for a bank or SBA, or try to figure it out on your own. So there was a lot of missed opportunity in that little bucket under there, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely. That's the structuring side. The flip side, though, is who can invest in a $3 million deal? Like you're gonna, right? I'm raising 3 or 5 or 10 or 50 or 100 million to do a project. Well, I don't know about you, but I am an accredited investor, but I don't have $100,000 laying around to do one deal. I may have $100,000 to do 30 deals. So the minimum check size in a $3 million or a $10 million deal is 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. Minimum check size on a $100,000 deal is $5,000, 2,500. So not only was there keeping deal makers out, syndicators, people that do the deals, they couldn't figure it out. They didn't want to figure it out. You had to raise so much money. It also kept the investors out. Those people that only had $5,000 to invest or $10,000 to invest, they were out too because minimums were so high.
So the SPV opened up the bucket of capital because, let's just say, you and I have $100,000 each to invest, but I don't want to put it all. This is I'm going to go a little risky in the startup world, but I want to diversify my risk and maybe do 10 investments, right? Or 20 investments. So the SPVs were a gateway that allowed accredited investors to make these kind of diversified risk through. Now, does that mean that they had to do like 20 different SPVs, or could they put it in one SPV and the SPV could do investments? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's multiple structures, and that goes back to the deal organizer, the syndicator, right? The syndicator going to do an SPV, which you described as a multi-asset SPV. So I set up one SPV, I'm going to put in 5 assets. As soon as you start complexity, as soon as you start adding complexity, cost goes up. So at Assure, we start adding in costs. Like you want 2 assets, a little extra. You want 3 assets, a little extra. And that's just because on the backside, taxes, distribution, admin, all multiply every time you add another asset. So many times it's cheaper to go single asset, single asset, single asset than it is to go one SPV, stick in 10, one SPV, stick in 10. Ultimately, how much are you going to raise? What are the assets? What does your investor base look like? All of these are decisions for a deal organizer to make. Today, the products are out there. Single asset, multi-asset, micro VC fund, where 15 years ago, it was a very, very expensive single asset SPV or a very, very expensive venture capital private equity fund. Those were your 2 options.
So since your inception, so you and your co-founder, AKA your wife, right? You guys were building this, and 18 months later, you're like, wow, this is actually a real business here, because in the meantime, you were doing other deals, you were a lawyer, fund of funds, you were doing other stuff. At one point you had to go, do we turn this into an actual business? Now, what did the conversations around the dinner table look like there?
Yeah. So we just were going along thinking, maybe there's a little extra revenue, but the business continued to double, like just every kind of quarter. If 5 phone calls came in one quarter, 10 the next, then 20, number of deals were doubling, the number of phone calls coming in. And the other thing is we weren't really advertising for the business. So we kind of had this like Assure general website up, but all the entities were Assure Fund Management. So it was kind of this kind of subsidiary long name that we set up in order to be sitting on all these documents to do these deals.
Yeah.
And so Assure Fund Management did not have a website, did not have a LinkedIn profile, and yet it was just doubling every single quarter. And so we were like, there's something here, and we should drop all these other things and just kind of go in. And, at some level, you build a business, it gets a little scary, right? Do we dump these clients we're making revenue on? Do we stop advertising for these other products? Kind of fingers crossed, but obviously all the signals were there to say you should double down on this.
Yeah. When it comes to focus, right? You guys, holy moly, this thing keeps doubling. Let's see where we could take this. You said you had to start saying no to things or saying goodbye to things. What was the hardest thing to start saying no or goodbye to? Yeah, obviously you can't do, client names and such like that, but like what was the thing that you were like, you held on the longest to? and then you
Yeah.
had to pull the trigger?
It's a good question. One of the businesses that we had that was something that I created and was working closely with the clients is it was an outsourced fundraising service for like venture capitalists. So basically, when you fundraise, anybody that fundraises, there's all this interaction, all this follow-up, all this documentation. And for many fundraisers, they really hate it and they want to do it as little as possible. But if you're going to be a good fundraiser, be it syndication or like venture private equity fund, you need to do it all the time, year round, all the time. And the very best did it year round. And so our service was, let us help you. Like we'll kind of do those edge things that you don't like to do and follow up and aggregate stuff into a database, right? And so it's very involved, and these clients were really using us to help them fundraise, which is the bloodline for their businesses. And I just knew that couldn't keep doing that one and calling the clients. It was the first time ever just to call a client and say, I'm no longer providing this service, which is a unique thing to do. And, we hear stories of lots of people doing it, but when you actually have to make that phone call, it's a little different than just listening to someone say, yeah, I called them and said, I'm not doing it anymore. And you go, oh, that was very smart. But when you're on that phone call going, hey, so-and-so, we've been hanging out for years and we're integrated with you and I'm going to pull the plug on this. Those aren't necessarily comfortable phone calls.
No, we had to do that recently where we had to call a client and just say, we're doing a pivot in the business. We see the better opportunity over here. And the service that we were providing, we're no longer doing. That I was so anxious. Like, I've done a lot of deals in my life. I've made a lot of, I've had some fun and had a lot of failures, but that was tough for me to do because, I was tied to their business. Like I've invested in their people and, I was anxious about it. Like walking up to that, what were some of the conversations? Because, there was that last client that you're like, well, we really like them, but we got to say goodbye. Like,
yeah,
how did that work out?
Yeah. I did have a team member that was really lead on it. And I'm like, do you want this business? And I knew that the clients really were attached to me as I had the longer experience. It was my product that I came up with. And so what made it a slightly easier for me was this employee says, yeah, I'll take the business. And my employee would spin out and no longer be out of Sure. And so it kind of gave them a little bit of a lighter landing that someone would help wind it down. But, these personalities that we deal with at Assure are investors and GPs and fund managers. They have strong personalities. They have, type A red personalities because they're out there, eating what they kill and they don't mince words, right? You call them and they're going to tell you exactly how they feel. But yeah, you just have to kind of bite the bullet and just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'd be tempted to be like, just send a text message, but sometimes you just gotta face the music and be like, man, we're moving on, dude. Well, cool. All right. So you talked about like, you mentioned some acronyms and some different players in the game that are involved in an SPV, right? So if you had to build out like the people involved in an SPV, what does that look like?
Yeah. So you have the deal organizer, syndicator. That's kind of the client of Assure. That may be a listener here on this podcast who finds the deal, finds the investor. Then you have investors, right? Those people that want to participate in addition to other investors into that deal. So that's kind of like step one, right? Like, are we going to do this? Do I have an asset and an opportunity that's interesting for other people? Mm-hmm. So once those two parties connect and are in agreement, now we get into the structure. And here in America, structures are state by state. Utah, Nevada, California, Colorado, Delaware, New York, right? You pick a state, but you don't have to live in that state. You can kind of borrow any state you want structure. Delaware is considered the best. It's a little bit reputation, kind of a great marketing campaign on their side, but everyone's really comfortable with it. So most people just go to Delaware, sign up, they take fax still. So you fax in your paperwork, and they will fax back or email you your receipt, if you will. And so that's one thing, is like getting your structure that's state based. Once and for there, you're kind of done unless you raise money. So if you're going to do a capital raising SPV, now other agencies and other groups start to be interested in that. Every state that one of your investor comes from, each state feels responsible for their citizens. And so they will perk up and be like, did you just call one of my citizens and ask them for money? Right. And so like, is this appropriate? Are you licensed, or was this person an accredited investor? So everybody that puts money into a capital raising SPV should be accredited, which is kind of a wealth standard. You know, you make a bunch of money, or you have a bunch of money, kind of 300,000, $1 million, kind of these certain numbers that they have as standards for the requirement to be an accredited investor. So states are mostly concerned about, don't sell it to grandma who may only, have 50,000 a year on a fixed income. So each state agency is kind of leaning forward that you need to be careful about. And then you've got your federal agencies. So the SEC in Washington, D.C., they want you to tell them if you have raised money. It's just a simple reporting. There's really just like, raise your hand, hey, I did this. And they just want you to fill out some paperwork and tell them. And then there's the IRS, which is if you raise money, now you've got an entity, right? So we did that structure. And because you did that structure, taxable events are happening inside. So the IRS now is leaning forward, say, I want you to tell me about what you're doing, how much you raised. And they're really interested on income, right? So if you made the investment and it all goes south and no one made any money, the IRS, is like, okay, walking away here. But if you make money, you get dividends, you got money coming in, you have a great exit. Now, they want their piece of that, and they want you to report on that. And so those are mostly the groups that are kind of government, if you will, that are going to lean forward when you do a capital raising SPV.
Got it. So, kind of a state by state situation, right? How in the world, right? So let's just say I'm a deal organizer and I'm like, I want to start a SPV, want to, raise a couple $100,000 because there's a cool project that I want to invest in and that other people want to invest in too. Listen, I'm not a, Series 7. I'm not an investment banker. I don't, I'm not licensed with FINRA or SEC. How in the world do we make this work? Like, I'm sure you get asked that kind of question every single day of your life.
Yeah. So that's another group, I suppose I didn't mention. It is the SEC, or it's FINRA, right? It's kind of the Securities and Exchange agencies. They want to make sure that people aren't breaking their rules when it comes to raising money. And for the most part, people think like, if I raise $1, I've kind of stepped into this regulated world. That's not necessarily the case. Kind of going back to the earlier part of the podcast when we were talking about what the environment was like before SPVs, because every SPV or fund was of a certain size, everybody was living on this side of the line, which was regulatory line. Nobody was raising $100,000 SPV, so no one was really exploring the regulatory requirements for a very small single asset SPVs. So the mindset has always been, you raise money, you got to be, regulated with FINRA and all this stuff. And that really was the case back in the day because everybody was raising lots of money. So if you're raising, so it is state by state. And just to step back, the federal government, the SEC steps in when money gets big, 150 million, 100 million. When you get big, the SEC is like, now I'm interested. I don't want to get out of bed for $100,000 SPV. We'll let the states regulate between 0 and 100 million, let's say. So if you're down here doing a couple $100,000 SPV, you go to the state that you reside in, so not Delaware, but where you live, and you figure out, hey, am I allowed to do this? And basically nearly every state will have some sort of exemption, an exclusion that allows you to behave within rules without being registered for not very much money. So let's say 25 million or less, 10 million or less, 15 million or less, or it could be, 10 deals a year. So every state's different, but you can kind of get a theme or a thread through all of them that says, if you're going to do a few SPVs, a few 100,000, and everybody's accredited, don't bother us. They're kind of, I don't get out of bed either until you're at 15 million or 25 million. And so there's this white space for nearly everybody. Again, it's state by state, to do some SPVs without stepping into that big regulatory world.
So we talk about, it's kind of like the tipping point where it's like, oh man, maybe SPV makes sense because investment bankers aren't paying attention to these smaller deals, right? It doesn't incentivize them that much. And you're starting to see, these smaller deals like get really good interest and traction. What's kind of like the floor where you're like, you know what, it's probably not enough money to justify the cost and the amount of work needed for an SPV?
Yeah. So that's kind of twofold. One is, how much does Assure charge, right? So if we charge 100,000, then you've got a different floor than if Assure charges $5,000. So at Assure, with our technology platform, people click a few buttons and all these things happen, right? Entities and EIN numbers and bank accounts, and people can run SPVs on their own by using software. But we still do taxes, we do assistance, we do KYC checks. So we're there to help along the way. So we charge ourselves a software fee, if you will, plus our administration fee. We have different fee structures. So one of our lowest fees is about $4,500 for a small $50,000 SPV. So for us, we have some fee arrangements and products that we hope that allow people to do really small deals. That's one of the things we like to give back to the ecosystem. Then the other side is you as a deal organizer and your investors. So if you as a deal organizer say, I don't feel comfortable anything less than 1% of the raise going to service providers or the technology that we use, maybe you say 5% is sufficient. Maybe you say 10% is sufficient. So that's a kind of a personal decision. I've had people say, Assure's fee is too high for $1 million raise, which I scratch my head. And I have people say, your fee is perfect for $100,000 raise. So it's really kind of a personal decision and a relationship you have with your investors of how much of their money, or maybe you pull it out of your own pocket, goes to fund administration, professional services around your SPV. We're seeing SPVs as small as 20, 30,000 on our platform,
mm-hmm.
and as high as hundreds of millions of dollars.
Cool. Since your inception, around what date was it?
So when Angel is called was July of 2013.
How many SPVs have you guys run since then?
We've run around 9,000 SPVs.
9,000 SPVs. Awesome. If we equated a dollar value to that, because you guys have to track that kind of stuff. Like what kind of volume have you guys done over 9,000 SPVs?
So our AUM's over 11 billion.
11 bill. What keeps you up at night? 11 billion things, right? Holy moly.
Yeah. What keeps us up at night? Software breaking, wanting people to have that smooth experience, investors not having a good experience. Those are kind of the light things. The things that keep you up is lawsuits, or like allowing a KYC AML check wasn't successful and you've got dirty money into an SPV and the SEC calls, right? That big regulatory stuff is the scarier things. It's possible, but not probable because of everything we put into it and in the systems that we have built. But it is possible.
Yeah, you do anything 9,000 times, you know, things you're going to learn a few thousand ways not to do something, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the dirty money topic, right? So when a investor goes to make an investment, you know, that you have to do a check to see, are you accredited, not accredited? Like, all right, there's certain things that we're going to divulge right off the bat. Do you guys bundle that in with your service, and how do you guys approach that?
Yeah. It's in the software. People will, so there's two ways to do accreditation. There's a 506B, which is self-verification, which means we get to trust the investor. If you as a deal organizer absolutely know somebody's not accredited and you choose to look the other way, then you can be in trouble for doing that. But you get the chance to trust your investors. If it's a 506C offering, people have to prove that they're accredited, and that's built into the system as well as people show a tax return or a bank statement or something like that. So that's accreditation. People need to self-verify or prove that they're accredited, and that's built inside the software.
All right, so I'm running, let's just say, $10 million SPV, and I've been doing really good. But we found out that there was a non-accredited investor who, you know, put in 100K. What happens then? Because this is now an issue. Especially we're about to deploy money, but we got a little notification. Hey, by the way, Josh is not, or Josh is, whatever the case may be. Like, how do you approach that?
So if the deal hasn't closed yet, then that's much simpler. You basically, in the software, you can basically just cancel, return their money, goes back to their bank account, they're out of the deal. So on the software side, simple. You may need to have a phone call, which may be a little bit harder to deal with. If the deal is already closed, then you need to basically buy out their position.
Wow.
You need to find someone, say, I need 100,000. I need 100,000 from somewhere to buy Josh out.
Wow, super cool. So since you guys have started this, what has been the biggest advancement in the world of SPVs that you guys have seen? Whether it's technology or a law or something. What is the biggest, like, we did it, like it was a win for you?
I think there's a number of smaller ones, but I'll say that the biggest win is the progression or attitude change or the knowledge transfer to just everyday accredited investors. So when we started with SPVs, it was seasoned investors, institutional investors, and then the new group of investors who now could write a check, where before, like we said, $100,000, $1 million minimums. Now people can write $1,000 check. So the fact that they were coming along and loving it and learning it and experiencing it was the biggest innovation. Just some examples were, when we first started, everyone filled out their paperwork by hand. They wrote it out, and then they would mail us a check. And so just, that kind of sounds kind of funny, but on the administration side, we're trying to read people's handwriting. This is important stuff. Like, we're doing taxes on this stuff. We're doing security filings on this. Like, we need to know, what is your name? Like, I need to be able to read it. And, we would like call people, like, I can't read your handwriting. And so then we're typing it into spreadsheets and then into like databases and stuff like that. And then we're getting them wrong. And then we're sending their taxes to them and the information's wrong. And now they're like, you guys are clowns. Like, you got my stuff all wrong. It's like, well, we're not really clowns. We did get it wrong, but it's because I was trying to read your handwriting and stuff like that. And so today, people they don't even think about it. They just click, right? And it just happens. The other one is banking. When we first got started, everyone wanted to know what bank it was. Like, I'm not sending my money to any like Tennessee backwoods bank. Like, it's got to be Wells Fargo or Chase. That's it. Those are the two that I'll, send my money to. And I had to walk into the bank every day and set up a new bank account or do the wires.
Jeez. Yeah.
Today, nobody asks what the bank is, where it is. It's just in the system. They just click a button. They link their bank accounts. Money gets kind of sucked out of their account. I had a funny conversation with someone who's like, your system is too fast. It actually creeps me out because before the old way, I would have to walk to the bank. I would actually take a couple weeks as part of my due diligence process to think about it. I signed the docs, but I'm still holding on to my money, and I'll do that next week. And so I'm kind of continuing to think about it. And he goes, I went onto your platform, I signed, and the money got sucked out of my account within like 30 seconds. He's like, my whole process has been destroyed now. I have to like mentally be ready for it before I even like log in. And so those are the advancements, just really are the people's mindset around let's do SPVs, let's invest in private assets. I can do this with small checks is the large advancement that I've seen.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I promise you, Jeremy, if I sent you my handwriting, there's no way you'd be able to read it. It's like terrible. So like I could only imagine getting 9,000 pieces of paper with Josh's handwriting trying to figure that crap out. So awesome. Technology has definitely increased the velocity and speed of deals, right? For you guys, like the guy hit send and holy moly, I'm in the deal now, right? Like that quick. Um, in your in your in your vision of where things are going, what do you see happening in the future with SPVs, with investing in business, startups, private businesses? What are your thoughts?
So we have a phrase here is SPVs are going to eat the world. And what we mean by that is that investors love SPVs. And the reason investors love SPVs is that they get to be a participant in building their own portfolio. It's a lot like logging into your Schwab or E-Trade account, and I'm going to pick Apple, and I'm going to pick Microsoft, and I'm going to pick, some other company that I think is awesome. SPVs are the same thing. I'm going to pick, SpaceX. I'm going to pick this great startup down the street. I want to get some secondaries over here. I want to do some real estate. Getting to build your own private asset transaction, portfolio and diversify it. That's what people like. I know that people say, well, you're not as experienced as me, and you should just give me money and I'll make all these investment decisions like a mutual fund. There's some legitimacy to that, but the fact of the matter is investors say, well, how am I ever going to learn if I just keep giving you $100,000 checks? I need to wade in and start picking. And so because of that, we believe that SPVs are just going to be ubiquitous. They're going to just be everywhere. And as we build the technology and make it easier and easier and easier, it's just on your phone like Robinhood. Just like, hey, you guys want to do a deal? Sure. Josh, why don't you lead it, right? Click. Okay, guys. Within 5 minutes, deal's up, money's in. You guys are on to
deal making.
Yeah. Next deal, next conversation, next round, whatever it is.
Do you think so? This model, do you think that this will create a SPV secondary market where it's just like, I'm maybe not good at choosing, but I'm really good at managing and growing? Do you think you'll see that?
Absolutely. There's a number of groups kind of really flirting with that, but we have plans to have that in our platform in the next couple of years where you can then trade those interests inside SPVs. Like I did $1,000 over here. I'll pay 2,000 for it, Josh. Sounds good. I'll take it, right? And you swap out and someone else swaps in. There's regulatory stuff, right? It's not that simple. We can come up with great ideas that the IRS and the SEC don't, they haven't contemplated and don't really support. So we have to work on that type of stuff. But yes, absolutely. There already is a secondary market. We get the benefit of just at the end of the year, people saying, oh, we traded everything. Like we did all this activity and we're like, okay, there we go. Let's figure this out. But so it's already happening kind of behind the scenes, and to have it more formalized in a platform is forthcoming.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's some states that are really pro investor, really pro startup, really pro business. And then there's some states that are probably pretty damn difficult to do deals with. Now, when in your experience with SPVs and such like that, what are some of the ones that are like, hey, these are really like business friendly, investor friendly states that make the process pretty smooth for, let's just say, $1 million deal? What have you seen in your experience?
Yeah, so on that question, I really focus in on that FINRA regulatory world, because doing deals, there's really no bad state for investors. Like, investors can invest their money into private assets if you're accredited, and you're not, a bad actor and been sanctioned by FINRA for some bad act in the past. The states don't stop you from taking your own personal money and going into SPVs. So it's really about the organizer, the syndicator. There's certain states that make it super easy to say, it's hard for you to cross this line and have to become registered until you hit that 100 million federal number. We're not going to mess with you. I'd say Nevada is the very best in the state. They have the best kind of state-based regulatory environment. California is really good as well. One of those rare things, of course, if you're in California, they're going to tax you to death, but they make it really easy for you to organize deals and be, on to be in the regulatory framework correctly. Other state, New York has a really great structure for 0 to 25, and then it gets really weird and hard until you hit 100 million. So, every state's kind of different, and that's where I would hope to see growth in the future, is both kind of the accredited investor definition, so more people could be considered accredited, and then it'd be nice for states, or I don't know, the federal government, to kind of step in and say, if you behave this way, you only have to fill out this paperwork and blah, 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 that allows this to be less, every state's different, and I have to figure out my local rules and regulation.
Okay. Super cool. So I'm a deal organizer. I'm going to syndicate a deal. Like, when I'm walking into the deal, I do have to say it's a single asset deal, right? Because there's different structures and such like that. So let's say I'm doing a single asset deal. Do I have to set what the amount of the project will be, or can it flux up? Like, if I'm like, I'm only going to do $1 million, and then 1.5 came my way, do I have to say no to 0.5, or
Yeah.
can I let it go where it goes?
Not from our side. We basically do flat fee pricing. Million raise to a $10 million raise, you're going to pay the same amount of money on those deals. So doesn't affect us at all. Work that happens on a sure side would be the number of investors. So if you go over a certain number of investors, now I want to charge you a little bit more, because now I got to do that many more K1s and that many more distributions and that many more membership transfers. But AUM for us doesn't matter.
Okay. And so the deal organizer, am I allowed to, so let's just say there's a deal organizer who's not accredited. Are they allowed to participate in the fund or the SPV, not fund, as the operator, like the one who puts the deal together, syndicates the deal, and runs the deal?
Yeah, it's one of the cool things is you do not need to be accredited to be a deal organizer.
Cool. Can they get paid and compensated for their work within the SPV? And what can they not do?
Yeah, so everyone needs to be careful around that compensation piece. That's another one of those things where FINRA and the SEC and the state regulators lean forward, is around this compensation. You most definitely can take carry. That is a form of compensation, but industry standard by far, yes. And we do see a large number of our clients taking a small management fee. It tends to be kind of a one-time at close. So like 5% raise. So if you raise $1 million, I'm going to take 5% of it for my efforts, plus 20% carry if the deal closes. Plus, we're going to need to pay a sure, $10,000-$15,000 one time for their service. So yes, you can take some management fee. You can take carry, even if you're not accredited.
Okay. So there's a lot of work being done in the capital space, right? So the SEC has a finder designation. They have investment banker, capital acquisition broker. They have a finder, right? But some states go, hey, like the state of Florida. I'm sorry, the SEC might say you're allowed to be a finder. State of Florida says, no, you're not allowed to be a finder. But let's just say I have a large network. I'm great at putting deals together. Or I have I do a bunch of real estate deals, and here we found one. So an SPV can give a deal maker another vehicle, essentially, to do more deals, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
What advice do you have for the syndicators out there? We've interviewed a lot of, cap raisers and, deal originators and such. Like, what advice do you have for us, or some guidance to make sure that we stay, based on the 9,000 deals that you've done, like stay in the right, stay in the right zone? What's some things that we should focus on?
Yeah. Where we find people that get in trouble or start crossing lines, get in the gray areas, when they're overly concerned about immediate compensation. If you're playing for carry, we don't see people getting into trouble. The interests are aligned. Investors get it. Everyone gets it that we're putting together an SPV. We're all going to win it on the back end. If you do try to get some compensation up front, make it modest, make it reasonable, take, one time at close, not annually, ongoing. That's where, again, you want to perk up the ears of regulators, take lots of money, take annual money, take percentage of money. And that's where people will start to kind of ask questions. Always just accredited investors. Don't ever take money from non-accredited investors. I've heard all the arguments. Just don't do it.
Yeah. So there's crowdfunding, right? So someone who's going to raise 300 grand, they might explore crowdfunding, right? Going to the open market, non-accredited investors. Let's get $5 from a million people, right? Yep. Versus, over here at SPV. So the founder of the organization's exploring which route to go to help raise.
And they can go both, right? They can go to a crowdfunding platform, and they can do an SPV through you as an organizer. Crowdfunding continues to come up as a topic, and I think it's a great topic to talk about. But you're required to have a FINRA approved platform to do it. So just you and I saying, hey, we syndicate all the time without a platform, where you can't just do a crowdfunding deal. You have to walk through this process, almost like becoming a broker dealer, if you will, to then be authorized to do crowdfunding raises for people.
We've explored opening our own platform and going down that route. We decided heavily against it. And there's some people doing it great and good for them, but for us, we were like, man, this is brutal. The financial model for that is challenging. Some people are doing it really well. We wouldn't have the economies of scale to be able to do that. But I think that in its thing is, don't take money from non-accredited. I think that's a good piece of advice that I've heard myself. Do you want to talk? I'll give you kind of like the fork in the road. You get to choose the direction we go. Do you want to talk about the accreditation status and why, like the history of it, or why it's there, and maybe the good things that happen because of it, and maybe the challenges that might need to be addressed? So that's a topic we could go, or we could go into the topic of what the blockchain and the crypto and where that's going to go in the world of clicking a button and starting an SPV. Like, you choose your path.
Yeah. History or the future?
You got it. Nice. I did that accidentally.
Yeah. Well, let's go blockchain, just because I think it's a little more fun.
Cool. All right. So already right now through Assure, people aren't faxing stuff with you with, chicken scratch hieroglyphics on it that you have to interpret and hopefully get it right. So now you guys have become the world-renowned SPV leader, the experts in the industry for doing this for AngelList and all these other platforms, Seed Invest. Awesome job. How is blockchain and crypto, NFTs, and this world of digital currencies and stuff that I fully don't understand, how is this going to affect the future of investing?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things about keep you up at night. That blockchain thing is really something that I wonder if it's complete disruption of our business and a lot of other businesses. Some of our clients that do Web3 basically describe, the internet as the information revolution, and Web3 or blockchain is the banking or finance or funding revolution to the world. I think blockchain is going to be a big player in the future, and I don't know if that's next year or in 5 years, but the fact that you could eventually do a couple of things. One is kind of universal identity. So I'm not like doing identity checks and KYC with every platform, and every time that there's some linkage between this is who I am and I just have to put in a code or scan my face or put on my thumb on my phone or something, and it just immediately identifies you. I think that is impactful for speed, for safety, for all of us that are trying to live within the rules, be within the lines, take appropriate money, and we can feel safer. Otherwise, there's this kind of this fear of, did I do it right? Did I do enough? Am I going to get tagged because some money slipped through? So I think there's some safety and excitement there. Movement of money is pretty exciting, because as someone that's been working with banks, say they're the worst to work with.
They're the worst with money.
They're the worst. And, I know that they're really heavily regulated, and it's not so much what they want, but it is what's being imposed upon them. To be able to like just have crypto or fiat or whatever, and just be able to push buttons and convert and move and just do things really smoothly, instead of this, I have to have this formal bank account, I have to like type in my numbers and log in. That would be amazing too. And all this increases speed, which is what people want as well. It increases smoothness. And so we're seeing some companies pop up that have some of those features of invest with whatever you have and we convert it automatically and stuff. And so that's really cool. And the third thing about blockchain that we're seeing that we're starting to see some companies come out with is to kind of digitize an SPV and put the membership interests up on the blockchain. And that allows for trading, like liquidity.
Secondary market. Yeah, the liquidity events. Yeah.
I think that the regulators are going to step in. Like, they're always kind of 5 years behind. I think that's going to happen. And I think they're going to step in and really shut it down or regulate it. But what we've seen with innovation is they don't really shut it all the way down. They may come in and slow it down, but there'll be some real benefits from that. So those are the things that we're seeing in the next 3 years that we'll see coming as part of kind of the deal making ecosystem.
It's exciting. It's a little scary, right? It's like it's so like there's so many cool things that could come from this, and then it could also flip on the other direction where it's legislation comes in and it crushes deals, or it makes it so difficult nobody could do a deal. Let me ask this question: you're a deal guy, right? So you've seen 9,000 deals come across the table for these SPVs. Like, how in the world do you put guardrails up to make sure you don't get inside every single deal and I'll invest in that and invest in that? Like, how do you protect yourself from going investor, crazy within these?
Yeah, I've set a policy that we just really don't mix business with pleasure, because for us, finding investors is so hard. It's very, very difficult. It's maybe the hardest thing to do when it comes to investing. Finding deals is hard, but finding investors tend to be even harder. And if I step into one of my clients, hey, can I come into one of your deals? Now they talk and oh, Jeremy, he's in my deals. Well, why don't you come in my deal? So we have 1,000 clients, and I really worry about, well, you're favoring this client over this client. And so I'm very quiet about the deals that I do. And I try not to mix that so that I don't get sucked into this unsuccessful relationship.
Yeah, I would have a challenge in that, because I like deals, and if I'm seeing all these deals come across the table, I'm like, oh, I like that one. This one's interesting. Let me ask you this question, without getting too involved or maybe even throwing some money at it. What are some deals that you have seen and you're like, man, those are my favorite. Those deals tune me up. I really like to see, I like being involved in them, or I like seeing them happen.
Yeah. So we have so many deals happening. It's very difficult for us. It's almost like, ticker tape that they come across so quickly now. So when we first started Assure, I saw every single one, and I would go look them up, and I'd be like, oh, that is really cool. And that's interesting. Even today, I can remember a large number of them. But when we went from kind of 8 per month to 150 per month, it's now white noise almost across the line. And I'll talk to some of the team members who'll be like, oh, I just looked up this deal, that was really really interesting. And I'm like, I remember those days when I used to look up all the deals, and like I'd get no work done if I sat there and looked up everybody's deals. What I find interesting today though now is to watch the organizers or the syndicators and their success, because I'm seeing their exits on the backside.
Yeah.
And seeing where they placed money. And what's most interesting today is watching the crypto deals that happened in 2018 exit, and some of them are massive, and those are really fun for us to look at and kind of watch the money go out the door.
Yeah. So let me ask these questions. Personal question. I grabbed your phone and I scrolled through your songs that you played over the past 10 years, right? Let's just say you've never updated to the, Apple 2000, whatever, right? And you have the original. What song is the most played on your playlist?
Songs most played on my playlist. That's a tough one. I get tired of songs. I binge them, and then I get rid of them. I'll go with, I have 4 kids. We kind of share the Spotify account. We get in the car, they grab the phone, they DJ. I'm going to say that the band I've listened to the most over the last 10 years is One Direction.
Can you do the dances like they do? You got all the songs done? No? Okay. Got it. All right. So what was the first major hire that pivoted the business forward? Like you're like, okay, we're doing this 18 months later. We're like, wow, we have a business doubling every quarter. Like what was the first strategic hire that you're like, and you don't have to name the person's name, but like position or function that like, you're like, we accelerated traction because of it?
Let's say there's probably 3. The first one was my very first intern that turned into a hire, in that he was a recent college law school grad. And when you do SPVs, it's very legal. It's legal entities, it's legal structures, it's legal documents, it's SEC, right? It's all legal. And he was someone that came in and really brought quality and attention to detail. So I'm not a detailed guy. I don't like to write detailed letters. I don't like to do detailed processing. That's what my co-founder, Katie, does really well. And he came in with that legal mindset, and he, I'd say, let's just write a letter and do 1 line. And he would do the header and the full legal and like just make it look professional, like we're a real thing. He made it look amazing. He came in and brought in that. The other 2 would be technology. Just building the right tech with the right team is very difficult, and it's so hard. So that, and then taxes. Tax is such a big part of SPVs, is having the right tax person. And even though I got that first legal hire right, and that's because I'm a lawyer and I knew exactly there, the tech took a couple hires before I got that really good one. The tax took 2 or 3 hires before I got that really good one. And once you get them, you're just like, it's like all the lights go on, and you're just like, I didn't know it could be so bright in here. It's so amazing that I got the right person.
To now, right? So since you started to now, what are some of the milestones? You mentioned 11 billion in AUM. That's pretty cool. How many employees, or what other metrics can you share with us that you guys are proud of?
Yeah, number of deals has always been a big part of it. AUM's been a big part of it. Number of clients, big part of it. Revenue, hitting those million, 10 million, $20 million revenue milestones are amazing. Employees, we've been as high as 200. Coming down, as we build technology, we don't need as many people. Mm-hmm. So where people used to do the faxes and read the agreements, right? And I don't need as many people to do those things. And so, having money come down. And today, what we're really focused on is gross profit margin. The technology will help us drive that to a very large number. And so that's the next big milestone that we're focused on.
How old are you, Jeremy?
I am 48.
All right. So 30 years from now, you'll almost be 80. You and I are sitting on the front porch, on a rocking chair, and we're looking back at, some of our business accomplishments or life accomplishments. And we go, Jeremy, we did it. how do we know we've won? Like, what are some of the things that looking back, you'd be like, I was proud of that. I'm proud of what we did or that. How do you
Yeah.
measure success essentially?
For me, it would be that the structuring and admin costs and complexity don't stop anybody from doing a deal. And I really feel like the minority groups, those that are underserved, they're the ones that get hurt the most by large fees, large regulation. And it's almost like a flat tax, which is if I go out and do a deal, the fees are the same if it's a $50,000 deal as if it's a $50 million deal, by way of like regulatory costs, by way of, filing with entities, all that stuff. But we would love at Assure to be able to say, it doesn't matter if you can find 3 people that love your deal and you can only raise 10 grand, that you can still do an SPV and allow anybody from anywhere for whatever cause or interest that they find interesting to them. And what's great about the world today, social media, these different platforms, is there's somebody out there that has passions like yours, right? Mm-hmm. If you love the environment, there's people that have that passion. If you want to save a unique, species in some jungle someplace, there's other people that have that same passion. And if you, because of these different networks and the flattening of the world, if you will, through technology, if you find those passions, why not be able to then bring your collective passions, if interested, money to then move whatever that passion is forward. And for the most part, I mean, you could write $1,000 checks, but if you wanted to bring in people and aggregate them in some sort of organized structure, too high of fees, too bad of technology means you can't do it. So success for us is that it just becomes ubiquitous, that when you and others with like-minded passions want to do something, you can pull that off with a couple clicks on your phone.
Yeah. When 2 or more are gathered to do something, amazing things happen, right? Like there's this law that happens, 1 + 1 = 3, right? And I love the idea of SPVs, and I'm really thankful that you clarified and educated me on the power of them. So let's do this, Jeremy. If someone's in the audience and they're like, man, I'd really like to learn more and see if SPV is right for me, where could they go to get more information and maybe do a deal with you?
Yeah, let's say 3 different ways it could be interesting. One, our website, assure.co. You can email sales@assure.co. And quarterly, we do a free virtual 2-day conference on all things SPVs. And so you can find that on our website. There are banners throughout our different properties. And you just click sign up for free, and we have on-demand or live sessions that you can come and really dig into all things SPVs, structures, taxes, post-close activity, exits, all those different things that you may be aware of, but you want to hear an expert talk about for about 30 minutes.
Super cool. What questions should I have asked you in this interview that I completely screwed up and did not ask you?
Yeah. I don't think any. I think we're good. I'm SPV'd out. I think we're good.
I'm tapping out, SPV. Awesome. So fellow deal makers, thank you for listening in on this conversation with Jeremy about SPVs and all the opportunity that it could open up for you and your deal. As always, reach out to our guests. All their contact information will be in the show notes below. Reach out to them, say, hey, heard you on the Deal Scout, and I want to find a way to do a deal with you. If you're working on a deal or looking at a deal and you want to talk about it here on this podcast show, head over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, maybe get you on the show next. Till then, we'll talk to you all on the next episode. See you guys.